Buenas, espero que ustedes se encuentren bien. Hoy les voy a enseñar a expresar prohibiciones en español. Today I'm going to show you how to express prohibitions in Spanish. This lesson will concentrate on 6 particular ways, okay? There are probably more, but these are the main ways in which you can express a prohibition. Now, the next question, what is a prohibition? So a prohibition is talking about a ban, something that is forbidden, all right? So you can use these structures to talk about laws, to talk about rules, and yeah, laws or rules, or even obligations, all right? So these are very useful structures that you can utilize in your day-to-day life, okay? Now, the first structure, and before we get to that, many of these are interchangeable, but you must remember that there are grammatical rules that accompany each one, all right? So you can use them interchangeably, but as you will see, there are some rules that you have to follow, all right? So the first way that we can express a prohibition is using estar and prohibido. And as you see, estar is going to agree with the subject, and prohibido, because it's an adjective, will also agree with the subject in terms of gender, right? And number. So it can be followed by an infinitive or a noun. And this means to be forbidden or prohibited. Alright, so let's look at the first example. Está prohibido usar el celular durante la clase. Using your cell phone during class is prohibited. So when we use it with an infinitive, it stays prohibido and it has to be singular. Está. Right? So that's the first thing we need to know. Está prohibido must be followed by an infinitive. Right? If we're using, if we use a verb infinitive afterwards, then it must be está prohibido. That cannot change. All right? Está prohibida la venta de alcohol. The sale of alcohol is forbidden. So we see now that because we have utilized a noun, the adjective has changed. Okay? So it becomes prohibida because venta is feminine. Right? And it obviously stays está because venta is singular. All right, so let's continue. I could also say, están prohibidos los celulares. Están prohibidos los celulares. So cell phones are forbidden. And you see in that structure, estar is in the plural form, and prohibidos becomes plural and masculine because it agrees with the noun, which is los celulares. So you just need to remember that. Another point to note is that I can switch the order. So I could also say, la venta de alcohol está prohibida. Same meaning. You can put está prohibida at the start, or you can put está prohibida at the end. Spanish has some flexibility with regard to sentence structure, okay? But what you need to remember is that if you use a verb infinitive, it must be está prohibido, right? And if you use a noun, the estar as well as prohibido must agree with the noun in terms of number. Well, for estar, number, and for prohibido, number and gender, as I would have just demonstrated to you, right? Muy bien. Dos. The second structure we can use is no se permite, followed by the infinitive or a noun. Now in this case, the only thing you have to worry about is number. Gender does not apply, okay? So And that means not allowed or not permitted. So, no se permiten mascotas. Obviously, mascotas would be feminine, but because gender is not an issue here, the only thing we need to focus on is the number. So, permite agrees with the noun in terms of number, okay? So because mascotas is feminine, is plural, we have to say no se permiten, right? So pets are not allowed. No se permiten mascotas. Yep. And over here, no se permite fumar dentro de la plaza. Smoking is not allowed inside the square. Now, similar to the first structure, if we use a verb infinitive, permitir remains in the singular form, right? So, no se permite fumar dentro de la plaza. Yeah? So, with this structure, the only thing you have to worry about is number. If it is a verb infinitive, it is singular. And if it is a noun, the verb will change according to the number or quantity of the noun. ¿Ok? Muy bien. Sigamos. Similarly, tres. Se prohíbe, followed by infinitive or the noun. And like above, we only have to worry about number. Gender is not a problem. Okay? So, se prohíbe hablar con el conductor. Speaking to the driver is prohibited. Muy bien. And se prohíben las zapatillas. Slippers are prohibited. So once again, it is prohíben because zapatillas would be plural. So these two are very simple because all you have to worry about is number. Why do I keep saying gender? Number, all right? But with the first one, you have to worry about two things, gender and number, right? Muy bien. Cuatro. No está permitido, followed by the infinitive or the noun. So this one is similar to the first example, okay? So this also means it is not permitted or allowed. No está permitido hablar durante un examen. Talking is not permitted during an exam, right? So estar has to agree with whatever follows in terms of number, and permitido, because that's an adjective, that must agree with whatever follows in terms of gender and number, right? So because this example uses a verb infinitive, it remains permitido and estar is singular. So no está permitido hablar durante un examen. Yeah? And over here, no están permitidos los niños. Children are not allowed. Once again, estar agrees with los niños because los niños will be plural, and permitidos agrees with los niños because los niños are plural and masculine. Okay? So you get the drift. If I wanted to make that feminine, I could say no está permitida la entrada de menores. Right? So the entry of minors is not permitted or not allowed. Right? The entry of minors is not permitted or allowed. Está what am I saying? No está permitida la entrada de menores. Right? Muy bien. So I hope that you were able to catch the drift by now, alright? So there are two more structures that I have to show you, and then we're going to proceed to a quiz. Let's get to it. Okay, so we move on to the final two structures, okay? The fifth structure, la quinta estructura. No se puede followed by the infinitive, which means one cannot or it is not allowed. Sorry about that. I should have put no se puede or no se pueden. And I'll explain shortly. Okay. So, no se puede apostar. Gambling is not allowed. Now, yes, no se puede because apostar is we're talking about the act of gambling, so that would obviously be singular, right? Now over here, no se pueden sacar fotos. Taking photos is not allowed. Now, I can imagine that many of you are asking yourselves, well, isn't taking photos singular? The act of taking photos singular? Well, yes, but if you look at the structure, right? No se pueden sacar fotos. This is like saying photos cannot be taken. So technically speaking, poder, the verb poder, has to agree with photos. Well, in this case, photos. Because you're actually saying photos cannot be taken, which would translate as taking photos is not allowed. If you look at it literally like this, then you would probably be more inclined to say se puede. But the correct form is actually pueden because you're saying photos cannot be taken. Because you're going to have to remember that the subject here is actually photos, which is why it is pueden. But in casual speech, you would hear a person say no se puede sacar fotos. But the correct form would actually be no se pueden. So just remember that. You're actually saying photos cannot be taken. That's why it will be pueden and not puede. Alright? 6. Negative imperative. So this is one where this is more direct. So this is if you're talking to someone directly or addressing someone directly, you would use a negative imperative, which is obviously using no followed by the appropriate conjugation of the verb. So, no bebas alcohol. Do not drink alcohol. No bebas alcohol. So this is basically if you're speaking to someone that you know, because this is the familiar negative. This is the familiar singular negative, the to form, right? So this is a person that you know. No fumen, do not smoke. This is obviously the plural form, the ustedes form. No fumen, do not smoke. And once again, these are, the negative is more direct, is if you're addressing someone directly, while the other 5 is more talking about, is more general. So you would see these on signs. If you're mentioning like a law in general, you would use the first 5 structures, but this one is more for direct speech, okay? If you're speaking to someone directly. Ok, muy bien. Como les dije al principio de este video, vamos a terminar con un examen. So let's get to it. So we've reached the final segment of this lesson. As you know, we will see what we understand. So you have a chance now to put what you have learned into practice. Now, as you see, you have to translate the following to Spanish. Here's the thing. For each sentence, I would like you to use a different expression. Right? Muy bien. So, número 1. Swimming is not allowed. How do you say to swim? Nadar. So, we just use one expression. So, we use no se puede. No, what's happening? No se puede nadar. Of course, that's one of 5 responses, right? Because there are 4 other structures that we could have used, but like I said, we'll use a different structure for each one. No se puede nadar, all right? Short pants are prohibited. How do you say short pants? Los pantalones cortos. So let us use a different structure. We can say están prohibidos los pantalones cortos. And of course, you know why we have to put están and why is prohibidos, because pantalones cortos, that is plural and it is masculine. So everything must agree. Están prohibidos los pantalones cortos. 3. Calculator use is forbidden. Forbidden. So another structure. No está permitido el uso de la calculadora. No está permitido el uso de la calculadora. And of course, because we've used that structure, está has to be singular and permitido has to be in the masculine form, because what follows is a masculine noun that is singular, of course. So, el uso. No está permitido el uso de la calculadora. Okay. This brings us to the end. Espero que esta lección haya sido fácil. Muchas gracias por ver y hasta pronto.